Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin and the publisher of TheBreaker.News, his website, TheBreaker.ca. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
Justin Trudeau is spending an awful lot of time in British Columbia. Are we that important, or are we just that damn nice?
Well, he loves to call this his second home, which is debatable because his first home is either Ottawa, where he's, of course, Prime Minister, the national capital, or Montreal, where he is a local MP. Of course, he spent a lot of his formative years on the West Coast here, went to UBC, did some teaching in classrooms, did some teaching on ski hills, snowboard teacher. He loves Vancouver, and who doesn't love Vancouver? And if you're from back east, wouldn't you love to come on vacation in Vancouver? And that's what he did. He actually came to the West Coast and spent 10 days of personal time, they said. Don't know exactly where he was or how much it cost. I saw one Facebook user say that she saw the Trudeaus on a beach back in late July. Didn't take a photo of them just because, they're on a family vacation and leave them be kind of thing. But where this does get to be questionable is pretty simple. Here you have the Prime Minister who's actually been in trouble for some of the vacations he's taken. That famous vacation to the Aga Khan's private island in the Bahamas. That got him in trouble because the Aga Khan receives taxpayers' money, and that could be seen as lobbying. So the Ethics Commissioner found that he had breached the Ethics Code, a first for a Canadian Prime Minister. And, of course, there was another time when Trudeau was in Vancouver on what was supposed to be personal time. Well, we found out that one night he spent dinner time with about 80 people who paid about $1,500 each to go to a Shaughnessy mansion. At an event that was promoted by some Chinese-Canadian businessmen, people who are part of some business groups that are very pro-Beijing, pro-Chinese Communist Party. They hosted Justin Trudeau for a private fundraiser, Cash for Access fundraiser in Shaughnessy. And this was a bit of an international incident, and the Liberals had egg in their face. And after that, they started to say, oh, we're not going to hold events like this anymore, and we'll invite reporters in, and not long afterwards, a month or so, and a bit, perhaps, we'll publish the list of people who came. So you know who was there with the Prime Minister, and oh no, by the way, we're not going to allow lobbyists to come. Of course, I've seen in a few cases that people who are there to lobby have gone and paid the extra money to visit the Prime Minister for a few moments and hand out business cards, but that's another story for another day. He has been in trouble for the time he's taken away from Ottawa, and there are questions about, reasonable questions. Where was he while he had this vacation? They haven't said yet. Who did he spend time with? Did he have any private meetings? We do know he had some phone calls with some world leaders, like the new Prime Minister of the UK, and of course the President of France. So he wasn't completely off the grid. We know that. Still doing a little bit of work. What else was he doing? Was he preparing for the election? Was he recording ads for the election campaign for the Liberals? It'd be nice to know exactly what he was doing during his time here, because some questions about why he has come to British Columbia so frequently since the end of May. From May 21st to BC Day, he traveled a total of 6 times. And some of those times were quick in and outs and on the rebound trips to BC. Back in June, he appeared at the Hats Off Day in Burnaby and went back to Ottawa the very next day. And then the day after that, came back to Vancouver for the Women Deliver Conference. was that necessary, and why are the taxpayers being dinged for these trips when the Liberal Party has enough money in its kitty to pay the bills? That's definitely a reasonable question. Even for his vacation, not going to criticize someone for wanting to take some time off in the summertime, especially a high-pressure job as being Prime Minister, but there's a right way of doing things and a wrong way of doing things, especially when the Canadians already pay for a private retreat near Ottawa. Harrington Lake is what it's called. It's a private lake, forest, and nice cabins, kept up very well, a National Historic Site where the Prime Minister has hosted some world leaders. I mean, that's a vacation spot he could easily go to, but of course, the surfing scene in Harrington Lake doesn't compare to the surfing scene in Tofino. The trips that Trudeau has come to British Columbia, these 6 big trips, again, mostly for photo ops, mostly to re-announce programs and spending that have already been announced, as well as cash for access fundraisers. He had a couple of fundraisers on May 22nd, a lunch and a dinner with people in the real estate industry. He came to Victoria July 18th and had an event at one of the hotel ballrooms there. At the end of his 5th trip to BC on July 29th, he went to UBC, the Alumni Center as well, where he had a cash for access fundraiser as well. It's very reasonable for the Liberal Party to be paying for it, but it's not. And I confronted Justin Trudeau about that. You can see the story on the Breaker.news, and you can hear the podcast this week under the headline, How Much Do Air Justin's Frequent Flights to BC Cost Taxpayers and the Environment? You can listen to his full answers to my questions, and, well, maybe I should rephrase it and say his full non-answers, because he didn't tell me any dollar figures and didn't really justify to me at all why this isn't an invoice that's being sent to the Liberal Party. You can hear his answers and judge for yourself. But politicians have often gotten in trouble for spending on travel. We saw what happened to Christy Clark, the stories that I unearthed back for a number of years and finally climaxed in 2016. Christy Clark and her heir Christy spending a lot of money to travel for quick in-and-out trips to her constituency in Kelowna and go elsewhere in BC for photo ops, and even sometimes party cash for access fundraisers. At least we have now a premier in John Horgan who prefers to take commercial, although I did catch him taking a private jet once to Kelowna himself recently. But more often than not, you'll see John Horgan on an Air Canada flight, a commercial flight. But bringing it back to Justin Trudeau, here we are less than 11 weeks till the federal election, and his jaunts to British Columbia are what Dermot Travis of Integrity BC noted for me, the kind of things you expect a party leader to be doing in the last weeks and the last days of an election, just before Election Day. The frantic search for votes and the epic trip across the country and multiple stops in the space of a day or two or three, and that's happening right now. So is the polling for the Liberals showing that they're at risk of losing a lot of seats in British Columbia? Is their fundraising down in British Columbia? Are they trying to make that up? Or are they just trying to stop the conservative momentum? I mean, there's other things to do when you're getting ready for an election, is to get your volunteers in a row. And are they having problems with volunteers? We've seen with the federal Liberals, Justin Trudeau is their biggest asset, but we saw earlier this year that he was also the biggest liability, the whole SNC-Lavalin scandal. And as much as that's not in the news every day right now, that dominated the news cycle for the entire first quarter of 2019. You don't get many scandals that are in the news every day for 3 months plus, and that story isn't over. And come September, when the election advertising does happen in earnest, expect there to be some attack ads from either the NDP or from the Conservatives against the Liberals, reminding everyone about the SNC-Lavalin scandal and what that meant for this government, which came into power in 2015, which was promising a real change. They were promising doing government differently. They were promising all sorts of disclosure by default, and they weren't going to be corrupt like the Harper Conservatives were. But boy, they've certainly given quite an effort to show that this has been a government which has caused serious questions about integrity. So we'll see that come forward in the fall. One thing we haven't heard yet, though, is people like Andrew Scheer or Jagmeet Singh, or Elizabeth May, for that matter, get on a soapbox and point the finger at Justin Trudeau and his travel spending and say, that's crossing the line, that's costing too much. That's costing too much in carbon emissions, in non-essential travel. We haven't heard the other leaders stand up for taxpayers, and I think that is a notable omission. But then again, are they saving it for September and saving it for the campaign? Well, we'll have to wait and see.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, the leader of the Green Party, was at the Vancouver Pride Parade. Jagmeet Singh from the NDP was there. Justin Trudeau was there, but Andrew Scheer from the Conservatives was not. Does that in any way harm his political brand?
I think it could on the West Coast. I'd love to know what the internal polling would say. But certainly it was a way that Justin Trudeau could score some political points and get the soundbite that he wanted. And it may have been also a preview of what might happen if there's a minority government, or there has to be negotiations on power sharing. Could Trudeau, Singh, and May, the TSM, the TSM turning point, could that be a preview of the next parliament, where Trudeau is leading a minority government that's propped up by the NDP and propped up by the Greens, sort of a center-left coalition? Could that be? Could we have seen that image not just be an image in solidarity with the LGBTQ community, but an actual image that we'll see again in October after the election? And Kennedy Stewart, the mayor of Vancouver, was there, obviously, and that's another question. If the Jagmeet Singh NDP falters, a lot of people are expecting very little from them and see them to actually lose some seats. Well, does Jagmeet Singh get replaced by Kennedy Stewart as the next leader of the NDP if Jagmeet Singh does not perform well with his party this year? So that image, keep an eye on it. The other aspect of it, though, is that Trudeau made $1 million gamble with taxpayers' money. $1 million was the amount that an arm of Canada's tourism funding sponsored the Pride Festival this year. A lot has been made in the past of governments sponsoring various events for political reasons, and the timing of this, of course, it certainly does have to be debated. I mean, it's an important year for people in the LGBTQ community. For various reasons, the Stonewall anniversary, but this is also an election year, and we've seen here in British Columbia, especially during the Quick Win scandal, and how the BC Liberal government was using taxpayers' money to essentially buy votes, to buy favor in certain segments of the community. In that case, with Quick Wins, it was ethnic groups. Well, in this case, was Trudeau's $1 million expenditure on the sponsorship of the Pride Parade and Pride Festival, was that really about helping grow even further a major tourist draw to Vancouver? Or was that about getting his spot in the parade, getting the federal Liberals in British Columbia activated and excited about that event, and also to act as a bit of a dare that will Andrew Scheer show up? Well, he didn't show up, and Trudeau pointed at that and got the soundbite he wanted, and that could be a turning point in the election. That you've got a lot of people who are soft conservatives who voted Liberal last time, that the Liberals must know are threatening to go back and vote Conservative under Scheer. But if they're soft conservatives who might be willing to stay with the Liberals, and if Andrew Scheer is painted as someone who is not as socially liberal as Trudeau is, well, that could be a problem for him at the ballot box. Of course, there's different kinds of conservatives. There's a lot of social conservatives who may not have wanted Scheer to be seen in the parade. A lot of different attitudes in other cities and other markets across Canada. You've got to wonder if Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives aren't looking for another Pride Parade somewhere else in Canada for him to go and march in, or for some sort of other event to march in, because this may have been a mistake that might cost him a chance to get someone elected here in Vancouver, but we'll see how that shakes out as we get closer to the election on October 21st.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after the break.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, are there certain parts of BC being overwhelmed by too many tourists?
Yes, there are, and the provincial government, some of the key ministries are looking at this, the Forest Ministry and Environment Ministry and Ministry of Transportation, as well as Destination BC, which is the Crown Corporation that markets British Columbia to tourists around the world. They're looking at a worldwide trend which is called over-tourism, which is basically too much tourism. There was a report done for the global tourism lobby, the World Travel and Tourism Council. McKinsey and Company did this report a couple of years ago called Coping with Success, Managing Overcrowding in Tourism Destinations. They're worried that this is going to harm the global travel and tourism industry, which is estimated to be worth almost $8 trillion to the global economy. Here in British Columbia, tourism is worth more than $18 billion in revenue and employs more than 130,000 people. Well, there's some concerns that tourism is just too popular. You've got the situation of transportation around the world better than it ever has been. You know, more airports, more airplanes flying to more destinations, and than ever before. You have an expanding global middle class. You have China and India, a lot of Chinese and Indians who have more money in their pocket and they want to see the world. And you also have social media as a platform where people can learn more about the world and see more of the world and see photos, see videos, and say, hey, I want to go to that place. You have this confluence of different factors, and it has led to greater tourism. And at the same time, it's also led to fears of damage to especially natural tourist spots, or fears of harming the relationship between a tourist operator and the area neighbors. We've seen, the Capilano Suspension Bridge in North Vancouver is a runaway success. from sheer numbers that go across that bridge. But during their Christmas lights display in December and during the height of tourist season in August, they have hour-long waits just to get across that wobbly bridge. Hour-long waits. People are waiting that long after spending more than $50 per adult to get into the facility, waiting that long to get across the bridge. Meanwhile, outside the gates, there's a traffic management problem. Some days it's a bit of a nightmare of the motor coaches that come from downtown, mixed with the TransLink buses, mixed with private cars, mixed with taxis. The operator of the Capilano Suspension Bridge thought it had a solution earlier this year. They wanted to tear down some aging townhouses on Capilano Road, which had been originally foreseen as a new townhouse development. Well, they went to North Van District, and they were told they had to have a public meeting and consult the local residents. Well, the local residents came en masse in January on a weeknight to an elementary school not far from the Capilano Suspension Bridge, and I covered it. And it was a meeting that was unique in my career. I can't remember a meeting like that where you had a real organic opposition. There wasn't except for one townhouse development, there really wasn't one group that was representing everyone. It was an informal petition, but there was a lot of people who were meeting some of their neighbors for the first time, or seeing their neighbors for the first time since the previous summer's barbecue season, who came together on that winter night and told the meeting facilitators and told the management of the Capilano Suspension Bridge and told some of the district councillors who came to observe that they didn't want it, that the plan was not suitable for them, that they were very congratulatory of the Capilano Suspension Bridge for becoming one of Canada's top tourist destinations, but they were also angry because the suspension bridge and its success have placed stress on the neighborhood, and it's not good enough just for the suspension bridge to offer free admission for people who live in the area. The suspension bridge has to find new innovative ways of moving people around and finding places to put their cars or get them to take more sustainable transportation instead of the traffic jams that are harming people's ability to enjoy the area. And some of the people living in the area had worries about their property values and their livability. And there was also the optics of the suspension bridge looking at tearing down some townhouses that were aging in order to extend the parking lot. Kind of a crazy thing to do when there is a housing crisis. So that proposal didn't go any further. We'll see what happens in the off season next year, but that's just one area of Vancouver, British Columbia, where you're seeing that clash. You're seeing a successful and popular tourist attraction losing its relationship with its neighbors, and that's what they talk about in these reports about over-tourism. There's a quote in the McKinsey report that said that while some places capture a significant share of the travel and tourism pie, others barely get a nibble. Moreover, some destinations are in danger of being loved to death, and that is a worry as well at Quarry Rock in North Vancouver, a popular hiking destination and a rock formation just above Deep Cove. Very beautiful place to go for photos, and take your Instagram photos, as well as Joffrey Lakes near Pemberton, which has a beautiful turquoise color to that lake, and of course the mountains. It's a beautiful area to go, but Joffrey Lakes and Quarry Rock both have the problems of traffic jams, of long lineups of hikers, of too many people who are essentially loving an area to death. And there have been some solutions that have been brought to the fore for better transportation and guides and better signage that have been brought to the fore this year. And one thing that Destination BC has done is actually taken a step back. They're not promoting these hot spots anymore on their social media channels. They're not promoting destination parks during the height of tourism season, or not showing off areas near cruise ship terminals, for instance. They don't want to add to an already stressed out system, and there'll be some curveballs and some opportunities coming along once ride sharing starts happening, perhaps as soon as this fall. Maybe other ways for people to find their way to to a tourist attraction, but at the same time, if there's too many Ubers, too many Lyfts that show up at the same time, it could add to it. So that is definitely a concern that the tourism industry here, which we've seen boom since the Vancouver 2010 Winter Olympics, that is in the back of the minds of tourism marketers, that if a place gets too popular, it might be like that old Yogi Berra saying that nobody goes there anymore, it's too popular. Well, the nobody goes there anymore part of that is something that could cause the tourism organizations, if they start seeing declines, if they start seeing complaints, if they start seeing environmental degradation, if they start seeing conflicts between neighbors and tourism attractions, then that could certainly hurt the economy. So they've got to keep an eye on this, and I think that we're going to see a lot more happen in the next year, perhaps several months especially, and it's all going to be built around this whole buzzword of over-tourism. This isn't the last time you've heard over-tourism, and you can read my story all about it in thebreaker.news.
The BC Liberals, do they have a controversy brewing over Ben Stewart?
Ben Stewart, yes. He is the Kelowna MLA who is in his second tour of duty with Kelowna. He was the MLA before 2013. When Christy Clark was beaten in Vancouver Point Grey by David Eby, she had to find somewhere else to run to become an MLA so she could sit in the legislature again. And lo and behold, she found the seat that she called the cradle of free enterprise in Kelowna. Of course, Kelowna is famous for the Bennett family, the Bennett dynasty. Well, Ben Stewart, the Quails Gate winery owner, was convinced to let go of his seat after winning re-election in 2013 so that Christy Clark could run and win in the by-election. And, of course, she called it a day at the end of July in 2017, which opened the door for Ben Stewart to make a comeback, which he did. Yet something happened along the way. There was a surprise meeting on Thursday of last week of the caucus. They were told that Ben Stewart had decided to leave caucus for some sort of fundraising situation. My sources tell me that there was some sort of fundraising situation involving a constituency assistant in Ben Stewart's office. Ben Stewart himself, I've been trying doggedly to try to get him to answer some questions. He sent a short statement that basically said that he voluntarily left the caucus while Elections BC rules on a request that he sent them to investigate an irregular donation under new election financing rules. So he's sitting out of caucus until Elections BC rules in the matter. This letter that he sent, that Elections BC says it has received, Elections BC doesn't want to talk about it because this could spark a full-blown investigation under the Election Act, and they don't like to say too much while they're investigating. But Ben Stewart has not been very forthcoming at all. I've been asking him to release the letter. Sending him an email, leaving voicemail messages on his phone, and making public calls on social media. Release the letter. Public has a right to know that if this is just an innocuous administrative matter, then show the letter. If it's that simple, and if he thinks he'll be back in caucus, just show us the letter. What has he really got to hide? Anytime a politician gets in trouble, a politician is better off being honest with the public because they are ultimately employees of the public. And some of the members of the public up there in Kelowna voted not just for Ben Stewart, but voted for Ben Stewart Liberal to represent them. And now that he's not allowed to sit in caucus, they're losing, at least temporarily, their Liberal representation. Even though philosophically Ben Stewart may be Liberal and maybe he will vote with the Liberals in the legislature, but he's not part of that caucus and can't benefit from the strength or the budget of the caucus. Well, there's this cloud over him, and if this cloud is deeper than he says it is, well, what does that mean for the Liberals? What does that mean for the Liberals? And what does that mean for his future in office? Right now it's down to 41 to 41. The Liberals have 41 seats, and the NDP has 41. And then there's the three Greens who support the NDP. Ben Stewart is going to sit for the time being when the House returns in the fall as an independent. unless this gets sorted out before then, he would join another independent. The only other independent there is Darryl Pleckles, the former Liberal member who got reelected in 2017 and became the Speaker and left caucus. And he was the one that stood up to Christy Clark in July of 2017, which led to Christy Clark leaving, which led to Ben Stewart's return, his comeback. So I'm keeping an eye on the story because until Ben Stewart shows us the letter, I think we've got to ask some serious questions about what really is going on. And is this about the donation that was returned to him in June? The Elections BC returns for the first quarter of 2019 show that there was a $1,200 donation ruled a prohibited contribution, and it was sent back to Ben Stewart on June 25th. What was that about? Why was an MLA found to have made an illegal donation? It just doesn't make sense, especially after someone before in a by-election in a pretty safe riding. What was he doing? Why was he involved in some sort of campaign finance matter? And why wasn't he aware of the rules? If this is a matter of oops, he broke the rules, why didn't he understand the rules before it was made? A lot of questions here that really do need to be answered. But again, it does more to tarnish the BC Liberals brand. People seem to be expecting stories about BC Liberals and fundraising, and when they hear that, they just roll their eyes and say, oh, the BC Liberals again. We've got a couple of police investigations that are still ongoing. One of them is about the donations made by lobbyists that were not reported as donations by lobbyists, illegal donations. Under the Election Act, the RCMP and the Special Prosecutor were brought in to investigate that in 2017. We're still waiting for the outcome of that. Meanwhile, we have the Ben Stewart scandal happening, and again, it swirls around campaign finance. So, if Ben Stewart's listening, Mr. Stewart released the letter.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin, publisher of thebreaker.news, his website, thebreaker.ca. If you have any questions for Bob or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet, and our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.